here, but also I wanted to acknowledge all of those of you who have travelled far and wide to come to this event today. I'm a father of a 4-year-old, and I see a lot of children around the room, which makes me very happy, but also to see a lot of them fall asleep, which is something that I experience all the time. And also everyone behaving very well. If my son was here at the moment, he would be running up and down and shouting for everybody to hear. So I can only conclude that the parents in this audience are more competent than I am at being a parent. I was delighted to be invited to this conference, and I'm really grateful to the organisers for thinking of me as a possible speaker. I want to commend all of you, both those of you that are already Justice of the Peace for your tireless work for your country and your countrymen and women, as well as all of those who are receiving awards later. I think all of you should be very proud of your contribution to Sri Lanka. As New Zealand's first High Commissioner in Colombo, it really is my honour to speak to this group. New Zealand opened its High Commission to Sri Lanka last year because we believe deeply in our relationship with Sri Lanka and we want to invest more in it. Before I begin my speech though, I just wanted to acknowledge the passing this week of Queen Elizabeth II, who was New Zealand's head of state for 70 years and of course was Ceylon's last queen for a period of 20 years as well. Her passing has been keenly felt in New Zealand and obviously in Sri Lanka as well. Now, I was asked to speak about peace in Sri Lanka, and when I realised who I would be speaking to, I felt frankly ill-equipped or unsuited or not really expert enough in the subject to talk about it, and so I asked for permission to talk about peace in New Zealand instead, and I was given permission to do that, and so that's what I intend to do. And I hope that what I have to say is of interest to you. Diplomats usually think about peace between states. It's our job to prevent war between countries, to try to de-escalate tensions, to try to find mutually agreeable solutions. But what we're talking about here is civic peace, peace within a country. And civic peace or civil peace is very salient and important, both to my country, New Zealand, and obviously Sri Lanka as well. Civil peace can be devilishly complicated and difficult to achieve because the potential conflicts that we're talking about are arising between neighbours, between peoples and communities who have lived side by side for generations. Now, I intend to talk about two things today, two primary things. One is some of the factors that have made civil peace in Aotearoa, New Zealand, my country, a vital issue for our political leaders to consider and work on. And then secondly, I'm going to talk about some of the lessons I think that we can draw from our experience of these issues. Now, no two issues are identical, and what might work in one place won't necessarily work in another. So I don't wish my comments on New Zealand to be seen as preaching or prescriptions for what should happen in Sri Lanka. Instead, what I'm really doing is what I intend to do here, is offer some observations as a friend about what has happened in my country. I know, because Sri Lankans say this to me every day, that most Sri Lankans think of New Zealand as a peaceful, idyllic and cohesive society. But I think it's important to note that insofar as that's true today, it hasn't always been true, and it has required a lot of work by New Zealanders to get us to the position that we are in today. New Zealanders had to work towards our present through decades of painstaking work, and we have much more work left to do when it comes to bringing about peace. Now, the state of New Zealand was effectively born in 1840 via a treaty between the British Crown and representatives of Maori, New Zealand's indigenous people. What this means is that New Zealand was, at its foundation, a partnership between the indigenous people of New Zealand and the New Zealand state. That concept of partnership between the indigenous people and the government is at the core of New Zealand. And today New Zealand is an incredibly diverse society. About 40% of New Zealanders are either Maori from our indigenous population, or Pacific Islanders, or Asian. And a significant part of the Asian population is indeed from Sri Lanka. So 40%. Another thing that's worth noticing is that a lot of historical wrongs have happened in New Zealand to minority groups. So the indigenous Maori population had large parts of their land and their assets confiscated from them in wars or in other government actions. Our legal system abridged the rights of our indigenous people, and our population, as it became more diverse, experienced more intended and unintended racism. And issues of race have always been extremely politically sensitive in New Zealand. As in all democracies, there have been instances where the interests of groups in the minority have been harmed as politicians chase the support of the majority community. So given all of these factors, the fact that New Zealand was formed as a partnership between Maori and the state, the fact that we are a super diverse country with 40% of Kiwis from Maori, Pacific Island or Asian communities, the fact we have a range of historical wrongs that have been committed, and the fact that these issues are super politically sensitive, what has New Zealand learned from building civil peace? I'd offer 4 brief lessons. 1. No matter how much time passes, it's imperative that the government has the humility and the wisdom to admit that it has done wrong in the past and work out a process for redress that is acceptable to the wronged party. Much of the wrong that the New Zealand government has apologised for with respect to Maori and paid compensation for happened many decades earlier. But late is much better than never. Historical wrongs left unaddressed fester and prevent a country from growing. 2. The political class must be representative of the country they are seeking to serve. In a super diverse society like New Zealand, if Parliament is not representative of the various communities that make up our country, then it cannot do its job properly. Over the past 30 years or so, New Zealand's Parliament has become dramatically more diverse in terms of race, in terms of gender, in terms of sexuality, and in terms of age. This has meant that New Zealanders have felt their Parliament represents them, and it has led to better, more rounded decision making. 3. Big efforts at nation building, including projects that relate to how different communities interact with one another, are more durable and sustainable and less fragile if they have buy-in from both sides of the political spectrum. New Zealand's project from the 1980s onwards to redress historical wrongs has by and large been supported by both of our major political parties. This has made it stronger and more likely to succeed. 4. The project of building and promoting civil peace is never complete. It's an important, ongoing piece of work that needs to be at the heart of every New Zealand government. This final point was brought home to New Zealanders 3.5 years ago on the 15th of March 2019. On that day, in our second largest city, Christchurch, a single white supremacist killed 51 Muslim New Zealanders and injured 40 more. This was a profoundly shocking day in New Zealand history because it was an event that was unlike anything we had experienced before. Of course, tragically, just over a month later, Sri Lanka was rocked by its own massacre on Easter Sunday. The Christchurch shootings led New Zealanders to ask themselves profound questions about how such an event was able to happen in our country. While the perpetrator of the shootings was quickly apprehended, has been convicted and will spend the rest of his life in jail, the Royal Commission of Inquiry into the event made far-reaching recommendations about such issues as security and intelligence sectors and our approach to social cohesion and ethnic communities. The New Zealand Government is in the process of implementing all of its recommendations. But the work of building social peace in New Zealand is ongoing and will never be complete. One important point, though, is how the victims of tragedies like this are treated, both rhetorically and in policy. New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern said in the immediate aftermath of the shootings, when speaking about the victims, quote, "They were New Zealanders, they are us, and because they are us, we as a nation, we mourn them." I'd like to conclude by saying something briefly about Sri Lanka's current situation. The sweeping crisis that has afflicted the country this year has been tragic, and my sympathies are with the many, many Sri Lankans who have and continue to be very badly affected by it. New Zealand has tried, with our modest resources, to do our bit to help, donating money to organisations helping those Sri Lankans most at risk of malnutrition. There will be a discussion of Sri Lanka at the Human Rights Council in Geneva next week, and New Zealand will be delivering a statement about the human rights situation here. I won't foreshadow this statement, but I will say that there are no times when it is more important for a society to act cohesively and to promote social peace and preserve human rights as in a crisis. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak. It's been a true privilege. And again, I just want to say congratulations to everybody who's travelled here to be acknowledged at this event. Thank you very much, and good luck for your future work.
Thank you so much for extreme dignity, the ambassador to Sri Lanka from New Zealand. And this is time to honor our extreme dignity, Honorable Michael Appleton. So we would like to invite Mrs. Mifra Azad and Akram Wazim, Attorney at Law, to be here to give a shield to our extreme dignity, Ambassador Honorable Michael Appleton. Ladies and gentlemen, honoring further, we would like to call Dr. Nihal, the Council Deputy Governor, to honor our Ambassador, Honorable Michael Appleton here. Thank you so much, extreme dignity, and ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. And moving further,